Hey there, welcome to episode 1 of the FFS Talk audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo. This is an audio program about discussing, solo or otherwise, what does not work, what does, and what we can do about it. Today is the 29th of November as I'm recording this. I haven't decided yet if it will be a Wednesday weekly or a Thursday weekly, something like that. We're just getting the show rebooted. Episode 1, anti-social media. Not antisocial, anti-social media. In my opinion, social media is getting tired. I think we're seeing anecdotal reports of the Gen Zers kind of shying away from so much social media. Not completely, but certainly the old school, the Facebooks and the Twitters, maybe too much TikTok. The landscape is certainly changing. What is the value not only to individuals, but in general? What do we get for all of this? I'll point out first that I am attempting to derive some sort of value from some of my podcast audio program productions. So my buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, DanHugo, link is in the show notes. As well, my Ko-fi, ko-fi.com profile page, /Dan Hugo. In the show notes, you do not have to, but hey, here in Las Vegas, it is a tipping economy. Why not? So what's going on? Social media has been around for a while. Let me preface this by reminding, I've mentioned this in my various other productions. It's on my resume. I got started in the internets back when Netscape was just getting started. I recall, actually it was the Mosaic browser, which was the precursor to Netscape Navigator and the entire company, in fact, at NCSA in Illinois. So I was working at Apple at the time, and I got an email, I think. I don't know if there were any other options of note back then. I received an email from a classmate, Bill, who was attending UT Austin graduate school. And he said, hey, have you seen this new thing? There was no real lexicon around web browsers and internet and so on. So I downloaded the Mosaic browser on a Macintosh Macintosh LC2, I think it was. Mac LC2, a very tiny little minimally powered computer attached to our probably local net in the bullpen in Mariani 1 when I was working for Apple. I was working for Apple Quality, actually. So I had an opportunity to check it out. And then eventually I ended up working at Netscape, had front row seats to the, later, it was after they went public, but it was front row seeing how the internet was coming together. The war with Microsoft was just beginning during my time there. But dynamic HTML, Web 1.0 was in full swing. Web 2.0 was only on the horizon. An integrated news reader for reading news groups, Usenet News, which would eventually be purchased by Google. Not Usenet, but Deja News, which was a web-based front end. Turned into Google Groups, which is maybe the last vestiges of a it's centralized, but a decentralizable social network, which who knows, maybe we should go back to that. So yeah, what's going on? The social media of today, it sort of, in my opinion, became friend groups where you know the person, maybe your neighbor, you know the people you interact with day to day, the regulars at your local, whether that's a coffee shop or otherwise, the people you see and talk to and engage with, obviously family, near and far, your classmates and friends from school days, coworkers, colleagues, all these people you could interact with. Back in the day, you might write a letter. You might actually take a pen and paper and write. The advent of email made it super easy to carry on conversations at a distance and asynchronously, but with a shorter turnaround time, obviously. And one of the upsides, you could see what you were talking about. You could quote replies and so on. So yeah, the early days of staying in touch at a distance with our new modern tools and then eventually to be able to publish a blog. The blogger revolution made things really interesting. Now you could publish your story not to an email to your friends, but in a much less personal way to anyone who wanted to read. Amazing. Maybe the beginning of the end, who knows? So the original internet, the one that I was working in, Web 1.0, and even before, anyone who was in any school of note around the country was probably exposed to the Usenet groups. News was a very popular way to avoid doing homework. So Usenet News, the original BitNet that my college, Harvey Mudd College, was connected to. Later, you could finger your friends across the network. You could engage in multi-user chat. There was, gaming across the network. So yeah, the ARPANET had grown up a little bit back then, and the ability to contact your, if you're in college, you could email your high school friends in their respective campuses if they were email users, and suddenly you were staying in touch with your fellow alum. Pretty cool. So the original internet, obviously the original internet was to connect contractors working on projects for the Defense Department and research institutions. But as normal people were gaining access to it, and as it was unified into the internet we know today, the bottom layers, the hardware and connectivity, we were connecting. We were able to communicate and share, and the advent of the web browser with open standards and with the extremely liberal interpretation of HTML and eventually JavaScript, so that you could still have errors and it wouldn't crash or cause problems. So, you could be fairly new to the game and you could write your own HTML web pages. Eventually tools came along to enable some publishing, and we were off to the races. Unfortunately, at some point, the notion of handing over our stories, our tales, eventually our photos, back in the early days when people were using modems, sending giant photographs and certainly video was a challenge. But those would come along later. But eventually, yes, handing over rather than self-publishing, rather than spending $75 at the Internet and later Network Solutions, and then later still various other registrars paying your big dollars to register your vanity domain. You could just post your content on MySpace or Friendster or Orkut. Crazy. Obviously later Twitter would come along and Facebook, obviously. Facebook, then Twitter, then etc. So the modern era of social media, as modern media and fast internet connections have taken off, not to mention fast wireless. I will tell you, there was a time when connecting to the internet while not being tethered to a computer on your desk was wild imagination, insanity, perhaps. And I will not soon forget the time I ran into a colleague of mine in downtown Sunnyvale. He had in his pocket a Palm 7, the very early days of a connected PDA, which obviously predates the smartphone. Early days, early times, very interesting. So the beginnings of mobile connectivity, the ability to share our stories, to contact colleagues, friends, family, etc. All very neat. And then Twitter came along at South by Southwest many years ago, thanks to a chance meeting at Cafe Centro in San Francisco. The beginning of the, whatever it is we have today began. So one of the problems with social media is boredom. I have in the show notes, by the way, there's a few links in the show notes, not too many. The show notes, boredom has been something people noticed some time ago. There's an article from the Harvard Business Review from 2011. It's a brief article, but there have been countless articles since. Many people have observed that boredom, which is where creativity and innovation come from, if you have nothing better to do and you keep staring at that same issue, if you keep pondering that gap, like, wow, I wish this thing worked better. I wish this process worked better. I wish this chair didn't lean. Why are people still using 4-legged tables in restaurants? They could be using 3. So when you're bored, you have time to ponder these things and you actually might take action. And that's the whole maker ethos in a nutshell. Like, hey, I can learn how to fix this and then fix it and then share it with others using the internets, perhaps. Unfortunately, though, boredom nowadays can be taken up with what some call doom scrolling, trolling, sniping, making awful comments, spreading good or bad notions, generally filling in your creative time with very passive consumption of media created by others. Sometimes for fun, sometimes to maybe they have an agenda. Other times they are being monetized. Either they are doing ad reads or advertising or representing a product that has become very popular, an influencer, or maybe they're just they've monetized their channel, maybe YouTube or TikTok, if TikTok still does this even. Paying creators, because platforms like these can't exist without people creating content. So nowadays you may be thinking, ooh, I should work on an idea that I've been having to, oh wait, let me look at this TikTok video. And 2 hours later, after being force-fed, algorithm-tuned content that you cannot turn away from. And what was that idea again? I can't remember. So boredom is being treated with algorithm-tuned content aimed directly at you. Now, for producers and creators of content on these platforms, the algorithm means sensationalism. That means, ooh, I get rewarded financially or otherwise. Maybe just that dopamine hit, the likes, the followers. Ooh, I have 1 million followers. And in fact, local media, or any media actually, people actually write hundreds of words for online publications about TikTok videos or tweets. A tweet is 280 characters. I've seen articles written in the 300 to 500 word range about a tweet. Why don't you just post a link to the tweet? Here, read this. So yeah, some of the boredom is being taken up by people with nothing better to do, so they write about other people filling in boredom gaps, right? So if you're a content creator, you're producing content sometimes for yourself and to share with others, but more and more often feeding the sensational algorithm that will make sure that more people who want or who might want to see what you're publishing do so, and they stick around so their view can be monetized. This means actual facts and actual meaningful content and idea sharing and so on maybe sometimes become secondary to just getting the views, getting the likes, getting the engagement. I don't know, maybe content and engagement are bad words. Interesting. So the shareholder, the platform and its investors ultimately capitalize on this. And that is what Cory Doctorow talks about sometimes. We'll get to that in a second. So revenue has become more important than authenticity, in my opinion, and the opinion of others. If you've ever been to an ethnic restaurant, I love Thai food. Go to a Thai restaurant. Fun fact, you can ask, especially if it's a Thai family-owned business, they would love to serve you the food that they serve at home or that they've grown up with. That's wonderful. You probably wouldn't eat it. Depends on your individual tastes. I happen to have had the good fortune to be more closely connected with a Thai family in their multiple restaurants. I would eat at their home. Hey, this is like richer, stronger flavors, certainly spicier sometimes. If you don't like Thai spicy, then you're missing out, in my opinion. They would tell me, quite frankly, and this was a lesson they had to learn, of course, authenticity is great, but people don't always like that. If food is too spicy or too strong or the flavors are too unfamiliar, they'll send it back. One of my favorite tales in the recurring headache that is working with unfamiliar customers, they'd order lemongrass soup and they would say, hey, this has hair. There's a hair in this. If you're not familiar with lemongrass, it looks like hair. It looks like blonde hair, in fact. And the first response is usually, no one here has blonde hair. That is lemongrass. So authenticity sometimes comes with some challenges, but if you replace authenticity with giving people exactly what they want, and if an algorithm can help do that, then you can maximize your profit. Maybe you want the lemongrass soup with no lemongrass, or with the blonde hairs chopped out completely, so they never enter the recipe. That'll make you happy. Fewer complaints, more profit, better reviews, more stars on Yelp. Maybe foodies will post more photographs of your lemongrass soup on their Instagram accounts. So they drive engagement, these algorithms, and if authenticity is what people want, that's wonderful. But usually they want what they want. And if you tell them it's real Thai food or whatever it is, they're very happy and they're very excited, but it's really been pared down a bit to feed their needs at the expense of authenticity sometimes. So individual solo content creators or big giant corporations can then alter their brands, their mission, their message, the way they promote things, everything, for the sake of this engagement. And this is the way. So if I've linked to Cory Doctorow, I had the interesting good fortune, I suppose, to be exposed to Cory when I worked. I say Cory like I know him, Cory Doctorow. I used to work at salon.com, my one true .com experience during the .com bubble in Silicon Valley. So I never met him in person. I've never really talked to him, but I did work at Salon, and so I started seeing his content back then. Interesting character, a lot of interesting insights. He and I are the same age, so we've been around. He has an article I have linked to directly, which is a nice segue into my next section of my notes. I have doctored the name, no pun, a little bit for the sake of keeping my audio programs non-adult, I guess. So the impoopification of the internet. You can replace poop with your favorite other word. Impoopification. This is a 3-step process, which is ultimately the destiny of all platforms to date. All of the big attention-getting platforms that are owned by billionaires. How'd they get to be billionaires? Sometimes they didn't start out that way. So impoopification has 3 steps, and there's a link to an article that I think it was the first actual mention back in January of 2023. It was focused on TikTok, but it was the general impoopification of platforms and business on the internet. And then he made a presentation at DEF CON 31 about maybe possibly reversing the impoopification or maybe bringing back some of the old internet, mixing it with some new internet with all of this in mind, and hopefully avoiding it. It'll be interesting to see if, I don't know, do we not have free will? I don't know. Impoopification. Impoopification. Sounds weird when you say it. Step 1, draw in users with a convincing story. During his presentation at DEF CON, he talks about the early days of Facebook. If you remember Facebook, if you remember MySpace, and by the way, I still have my MySpace account. Don't use it, but I do have it, and I have logged into it recently. Everybody was friends with Tom. Tom seemed like a nice enough guy in his white t-shirt looking back at you. It was purchased by a billionaire, and who knows whatever happened to MySpace. The interesting part, though, MySpace eventually gave way to Facebook, right? Facebook sort of took over the world. Their message initially, hey, if you are in a .edu, if you have an edu email address, so you're in school or you recently graduated and you have your edu email address, as I did at the time, join Facebook. We are all about connecting you and your family, and we are going to be privacy-centric, and we won't do this, and we won't spy on you with that. So it was all sunshine and rose-colored glasses. And again, he goes through this in a little bit more detail with a few more references in his DEF CON talk. So if you convince your early investors, and of course back then it was slightly easier, now it's much easier to say, we are going to capture everyone's information and monetize it. Oh, sign me up. Here's a check. But back then it was what it was. Facebook as an example. Hey, join in. So you take that investor money and you essentially cover the costs of giving away free subscriptions and keeping the content simple. And hey, you're just going to see in your news feed, it's going to be posts from your friends. Step 2, convert to advertiser preferences and start generating revenue. So in that Facebook example, here you're going to hear from just the people you're following and the people that they're following. Oh, and by the way, also advertising. You're going to start seeing some ads that look kind of like posts from your friends, but And then, of course, in one controversial move, hey, that ad has a picture of my friend in it somehow. So some funny business to make sure that advertisers would start to capitalize on the eyeballs, on the engagement. You see this in YouTube, you see this on TikTok, you see that everywhere, Twitter. Like, hey, well, let's start taking advantage of these engagements that are powered by intrapersonal connection, and let's start monetizing that. Let's start taking in advertiser revenue and giving them clicks and stats, and we'll target the advertising based on, ooh, you're friends with these 25 people, and we know what they post about, we know what you post about, so we'll start targeting ads for your political preferences, your region, obviously geographical advertising. We know you're somewhere in Las Vegas, so we'll advertise Las Vegas thingies to you. So on the surface, that's like, okay, well, yeah, targeted advertising, that's fine. But they obviously get very, very specific. And as you continue to fuel the algorithm, if I sound anti-algorithm, it's because I kind of am. So as you continue to fuel their platform and its algorithms and its ultimate profitability, you begin to see more and more advertising that seems to track you like, I was just talking about this. Or more likely, I was just searching on a search engine for this, or I just bought this on Amazon and now I'm seeing advertising for the same product I just bought. I think by now they've figured it out. They want to try to sell you related or adjacent products, not the same product. But yeah, so the interconnectedness of all things, never more true than in the exciting world of online advertising and targeted online advertising. So the development of a user profile has become insanely valuable. So step 2, convert to advertiser preferences. So suddenly the advertiser is more important. Step 3, you turn on your advertisers. Suddenly advertisers will now be treated like users. Users are just treated like fodder for money. So convert to investor preferences and keep more of the money for the investors and the founders. So step 3 is all about capitalizing maximally on all this attention, all this data. You can still target advertising, but suddenly now the advertisers are competing. Their rates go up. You have to pay extra for different targeting, different stats. But all the while, the main goal is no longer to collaborate with advertisers, but to dominate. So that's step 3. At that point, corporate profit, investor returns dominate everything. You look at YouTube and all the complaining. It is complaining. Complaining is fine. It's a good word. About their ad revenue sharing scheme. The TikTok content fund has been reduced maybe to 0. So paying content creators in TikTok, the model has changed. So it used to be, hey, we're launching a platform, contribute your content, whether it's Facebook posts or YouTube videos or TikTok short videos or tweets, and we'll connect you with your followers and friends and family members and so on. And then suddenly, hey, do you want to monetize it? We'll start putting you together with advertisers. And then eventually it's, hey, advertisers, we're at this point dealing with you because we want to capitalize on this. So you get to become our new, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he does a much better job of presenting it. I'm merely agreeing with most of his impoopification timeline. We all see it so many times. It's unfortunate, sad but true. Can we go back? As Corey points out, also in the DEF CON presentation is pretty good. It is a YouTube video, maybe ironically. You can check that out. Switching costs are the big thing. So and YouTube videos suffer this probably the most, to the greatest degree. If you have developed your YouTube community, a word I don't like because it's overused, the people who follow you on YouTube and who actually watch your content, if you suddenly say, I am switching to locals, I'm switching to Twitch, I'm switching to Rumble, some probably statistically similar across all populations of followers, some will just not follow. They say, oh, whatever happened to my channel? They're not keeping track. They have better things to do than to keep track of which platform you are on. So you'll see some people, they just have to multicast. They have to share their content, sometimes live streaming, sometimes after. across multiple platforms. This becomes a headache sometimes based on terms of service for different content creation with different content creator agreements on the different platforms. So, you can stream here, but not simultaneously to there. You can cross post under these terms, whatever. It's all big business. It's not about content creators. It's about the platform. So getting people to switch is tricky. You have to multicast, and eventually you could possibly start saying, okay, well, hey, if you want the second half of the interview, go to our main channel on this other platform. In his talk, Corey presents the notion that you could start legislating, regulating, and basically requiring that social media platforms are more transparent, that they guarantee interoperability, adversarial access. You essentially require the use of open APIs so that people can always access and interact with platforms and so on. He goes, it's a pretty good presentation. I think it's about 90 minutes. The top-down approach will take a while. Legislation, by design in the US anyway, takes generational time spans. The internet is still foreign. The series of tubes analogy, while not completely ridiculous, I got to say, it is closer to that than the headlines and the jokesters would have you believe. But, a lot of people in Congress, in the United States anyway, are not tech savvy. The notion of protecting privacy and access to our content so that we cannot be removed from a platform or access limited. And by the way, this is in the context of First Amendment protections on free speech not necessarily being guaranteed at all on business platforms. So that part's fine. The company can decide what they want to publish. They can follow Section 80. Is it Section 80? 320, 80, I think. Where if you are a publishing platform, you are responsible for if you're a publisher, you're responsible for the content. If you're a platform, you are not, to protect them. These are fine. It allows for some flexibility without costing an unwitting publisher who is actually just a platform. See now, so essentially, my understanding is, if I enable publication and I moderate it, then suddenly I am the publisher and editing. I'm an editor. This is something I've thought about for our Innovate for Vegas Foundation goal to deploy a decentralized ActivityPub-based Mastodon presence as a component of an overall city-scale information sharing scheme. What do you do about people who want to post horrible things? If you start moderating, then you take on more responsibility. So it is a concern. It's something that has complicated the notion of hosting people's content in a centralized way or even a decentralized way. But managing a platform like a Mastodon instance or a blogging platform or a photo sharing platform, if you start editorializing, if you start editing people's content for content, you enter the gray zone of responsibility versus the hands-off. We're just a platform. They're in trouble, not us, which is fine. I think that enables a lot more of these sorts of platforms. The outcomes are, unfortunately, more often the impoopification timeline, but that's life. That's how things are today. My take. I prefer bottom-up. I think while the top-down legislation, regulation dealing with big business is interesting and probably ultimately required, I prefer empowering individuals. I think people should take back their brands, reduce the barrier of entry to do so. Switching costs should give way to opportunity costs, right? If I switch away from Facebook, which I did a couple of years ago, actually, what are my costs? Well, I can stick with the crappy platform, or I can just say, I'm going to go over here. I still stay in touch with the people I want to stay in touch with. We all have email. So we shouldn't be held hostage by switching costs. We should take a stand. The ability to communicate with friends and family existed long before Facebook and Twitter. Make more things work for more people. So I think if an individual can learn how to, once again, relearn how to publish their content, their ideas, their pictures, their videos, their inventions, their concerns, The list goes on. If we actually make accessibility so that my content is consumable by people who cannot read or see or hear, vision or hearing impairments, the ability to do these things and to translate into different languages, for example, to internationalize your content so it can be localized to the reader's language and then perhaps translated into or transcribed into audio. These are totally doable, and we can interoperate across tools, the world of open APIs and information sharing technologies like GraphQL and REST, and even gRPC if you want, and there are others. There are ways to interoperate and interconnect and to enable people to do what they would like to do with their content. And if you enable them to do that wherever they want, you no longer hold people hostage. Literally, not a term that is very heartwarming lately, but you are literally being held because of that switching cost to use a platform that does not care about you to stay in touch with your family. That's kind of creepy. We should eschew elitism for egalitarianism when it comes to building things. If you are listening to this and are building a thing, do you want to have it just for the cool people? So you must be a skilled developer to use the tools or whatever. Okay, that's great. You're limiting your marketplace. If you build with the notion that anyone should be able to use a platform, to interoperate with it, to take advantage of it for their own goals, right? Like, hey, I'm building an information sharing platform, but you are only allowed to share the information that I deem appropriate. That seems disingenuous at best. If you're going to build a platform that enables people, you should do so and always try to enable more, not restrict more. That's my soapbox right there. But I think that's where the internet has gone wrong because of the goals of monetization. It's always about satisfying advertisers and then ultimately maximizing investor returns and corporate profit. And so we lose sight of the actual, those first stage improvification goals, which is to enable connectivity, help you share your message and ideas with your family and friends. We can get back to that. So let's do it. What can we do about it is the third part of the FFS talk aim. In my case, I'm here in Las Vegas. We have 2.5 million people in Clark County, give or take. I think it's 2.3 actually. And a transient population of about 40 million visitors each year for various activities and events, entertainment, trade shows, conventions, gaming, professional sports now. So people pass through Vegas. They have opportunities to engage and to figure out what's going on, whether it's entertainment or legal concerns. Can I do this here? Can I do this here? All right. Am I even in the city of Las Vegas right now? Probably not. So which rules apply to which visitors where and so on. That's the simple low-hanging fruit, right? So we can actually take a look at scaling an information sharing platform, not only for locals, but for visitors. And we have many visitors. We can start looking at things like accessibility and language translation. We can not base our translation on census data, but on actual visitor data, demographics about culture and language based in reality, not census statistics, which suggests that English and Spanish are the main languages for the greater Vegas area. If you have ever been a tourist visiting Vegas and you don't speak any of those two languages, too bad. Well, we can change that. The internet has Google Translate, Amazon has similar features, Microsoft. Basically, language translation has been addressed. No longer an uphill climb for most. We can use old ways and new ways. I'm personally not a huge fan of the continued use of RSS feeds. I think they were and somewhat still are great for publishing a feed that people can subscribe to and then follow without the need for a Facebook news feed or a LinkedIn news feed, right? I should be able to subscribe to your website, whether you're a business or a person, whether it's pictures or videos or blog entries or other more interesting data. Maybe we could start publishing real data that could be more consumed by machine readable content. And to that end, so you can publish your content with RSS feeds, and I like the use of actual calendars. You can tell me when the event is in a tweet or an Instagram post, but you can also publish an iCalendar stream, or I can subscribe to your calendar, your CalDave supporting server that publishes your calendar that I can subscribe to and receive updates automatically. And it integrates with my calendar tool on my phone and on my computer. So you actually treat data as data. It's still human readable, but you also make it useful for integration. And we talked about that previously. So data that can be accessed in many ways for many uses. We can take advantage of these existing technologies, but also look forward. ActivityPub gets a lot of attention. You have things like, obviously Mastodon. Well, obviously to me, Mastodon makes maximal use of ActivityPub, which is the communication protocol on top of ActivityStream, which was a structure for publishing activities, right? Like I took this picture, I made this blog post, and then ActivityPub is how to publish that to other subscribers who want to follow you. So if you implement ActivityPub, which I believe WordPress has now integrated into their platform, I believe Tumblr is ActivityPub enabled, although that's of questionable value for most. You have platform developments like PixelFed, which is sort of like Instagram, but not really. It uses ActivityPub, so you can follow people via ActivityPub platforms rather than signing up for a particular PixelFed or Mastodon server. So you no longer are beholden to that server. You can run your own even if you're so inclined and you want to take the time. And then there's Lemmy, which is a Reddit-like platform, also uses ActivityPub. And the list goes on. Those are the high-profile open source projects. You can actually make use of these, self-publish, integrate into your own ideas. You can modify, or you can create your own ActivityPub tools and jump into the exciting world of open sharing of information. Sort of like Web 1.0 or the original internets. Schema.org markup makes it reasonably easy to make your data human readable and also computer readable. So I personally think that RSS feeds should give way to a much more broad adoption and meaningful use of schema.org markup. So rather than having an RSS feed with the thing I do not care for the most, the drastically, wildly, awfully implemented, inconsistently implemented use of the CData HTML embedded content, such that when you publish your show notes for your podcast, for example, who knows how they're going to look? Who knows whether a unordered list will actually be rendered? Who knows whether things will be double spaced so you can't even see the content, scrolls off a small podcast client description viewing window. So you've basically sort of disabled functionality. The CData, if you're not familiar, it was a hack. It was literally, how can we enable rich human readable content in this ultimately machine readable stream, RSS, really simple syndication or whatever you would like it to mean. So RSS and Atom are XML feeds. You have to deal with embedding HTML. You can do it with CData, constant data. And I think it's constant or character. I can't remember. CData. It's not great. It's a hack. Schema.org, you can literally make HTML human readable and embed the machine data. Now I can scan through the schema.org markup of your blog entry, your podcast post, your video, and I can pull out the information like when it was published, the link to the content, all the things that are in the RSS feed can go into a human readable page. So it's human readable and machine readable. So I've gone out at length for this because I think it's actually time to begin a transition away from RSS feeds. Schema.org markup plus sitemap.xml could very easily replace RSS, in my opinion. So it's something to think about. As a service for our locality here in Vegas, we can focus on the sorts of things, first, on the sorts of things that Cafe Genius Impresario show, the show focuses on. So that's one of my other productions. We're not quite exclusively, but almost exclusively focused on entrepreneurialism and innovation here in the greater Vegas area. Various community elevation efforts that kind of fits into what Innovate for Vegas Foundation is doing. So yes, I'm using my own examples to start with, but if we start looking at the things not so often covered in our local media and we surface those so that they are discoverable in a local first, like we're about talking to people, about sharing information with people, things that don't get attention because they don't get mentioned, they don't get covered, they don't appear on any newspaper, any local media, local news coverage, even lifestyle. The 2-minute lifestyle clip on your local legacy television news channel, maybe they do 2 minutes a week or something. And the fun part, the bad news always gets multiple weeks of coverage. The good news might get that 2 minutes. So we really, and this is not just in the greater Vegas area, but in general, we don't do a great job of promoting ingenuity, innovation, excitement about entrepreneurialism. New restaurants launching. That's all you'll ever hear about it until they get Yelp reviews. So innovation gets the short end of the stick, so to speak. So that's something we could start looking at changing. Let's make our greater Vegas and visitor focused information sharing platform start off by looking at the things that don't get attention. Just an idea. So that is my antisocial rant. Many people have heard me say I'm not a fan of LinkedIn. Obviously, I've already personally, my personal take on these, I haven't used Facebook for anything in about 2 years. I think 2.5 at this point. I have spent the last year on the first of each month posting an exit post of sorts with a day count. So come December 1st, it will be definitely coming in for a landing. So Instagram is nothing but the exit posts. Twitter, I downloaded my data about 2 months ago. I don't really have any engagement on Twitter. I do get followed, not so much on my personal Twitter, which has been around for forever. I get followers occasionally, mostly not exactly humans, most likely. And then we do have an Innovate for Vegas Foundation Twitter, which gets useless followers, so, like 100% robots or people that are not interested in innovation. So the value of maintaining these channels, yes, you can argue, well, if you don't post meaningful content, you won't get followers. But, what followers are you getting on Twitter at this point? The impoopification of Twitter is real. That I would argue that. So Instagram, Twitter for myself, essentially dead. And then LinkedIn crossed over 1 billion members. I don't know if that equates to users, but LinkedIn is so algorithm centric. You will literally get notifications telling you to tag more people, post more often, feed our algorithms, please make our platform more advertiser and revenue friendly. And so companies have traded away their own direct engagements with their clients, customers, friends, colleagues. The use of LinkedIn direct messaging is a great example of awful. So for myself, come January 1st, I will basically completely escape the LinkedIn direct message conundrum. I don't really engage with much posting. I do post the podcast entries. No more mentions of blogs or articles really so much. The occasional newsfeed post, but I stopped posting on our Innovate for Vegas page about space apps because zero engagement, zero participation. So net return, zero. Net participation in Cafe Genius pitch practice events, for example, essentially zero from LinkedIn. So the value proposition has diminished significantly for those. So why bother? There are better ways. So if we actually, in my opinion, focus on innovation, entrepreneurialism, small and medium-sized businesses, individual creative people, not just, the LinkedIn population tends to skew towards tech and business, not so much creative or small, not tech or not corporate businesses. Yes, you're a marketing consultant. Yes, you're a social media consultant or whatever. You are in that mix. But what if you're a normal small business person opening a coffee shop or a food truck, or maybe you are a creator and you have a graphic arts business, or you have maybe you're an artist and you actually create art on the street. Maybe you're creating art installations, and maybe there are commissioned art by the city, by some other municipality, is following the right person on LinkedIn and happening to notice the algorithm generated newsfeed that includes your content the way that you reach people. Or, well, if you're an artist, the way that you reach people is with your art, and so that people know who you are and they make that connection with you as an artist. Is LinkedIn the way? I say not. So, interesting times ahead. We'll see if we can get this information sharing platform for the greater Vegas area to make some headway. Once it launches, I'm sure you will know about it. I'm sure I'll mention it in one of my multiple audio programs. In the meantime, I'll remind you that my Buy Me a Coffee page, this is about as heavy-handed as my advertising efforts go for monetization. Buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo has links to this show, to the Quaggling Sand audio program, to Innovate for Vegas Foundation, the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, and the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. Those are all published at the moment, mostly on Spotify. We need to change that too. More places to find your information. Don't be beholden to one silo. Own your content, own your brand. Take it back. Take back the internet. Make it yours. Make it ours. Stop making it theirs. And that is where I will leave it. FFS.